So you're currently the mayor of Baker?
I currently am, yes. So I don't know if you watch Fox News a lot, but we were the city who passed what they called a common sense sanctuary city back last spring. And it was basically telling Kate Brown to pound sand. It was a declaration of crisis, economic, mental health, and crime crisis based on what her mandates were causing as opposed to what COVID was causing. We were saying she was hurting us far more than any pandemic was. So I wrote the resolution. It was 3881, and basically I just sat down and kind of poured my heart out in that resolution. And we brought the community in. Our business community needed some help, and we told them we were standing behind them if they opened up. And it really kind of brought the community together, and I ended up on national news a few times with that. Ended up bringing other county commissioners and city council members across the state together, sort of in a coalition, where they adopted the same or similar resolutions, and we kind of banded together through this. So
I see.
that was in my first 6 months of mayor, aside from opening up a city hall to the people that had been closed down for a year, with no representation in there. We opened it up to in-person meetings again. We went back to as normal as we possibly could. So
I see.
and,
What year?
yeah,
What year was that?
beginning of this year.
Oh, this year. Wow.
Yep. As soon as we all came on board, we came on board with a brand new mayor, city council, and city manager all at once, and that replaced the very left-leaning structure that we had before. So that's how I serve as in a civic capacity. My full-time job is I own a publishing company that I started in 2007. So I'm also a small business owner.
What do you publish?
Books.
Well,
Right now, travel and true crime are hot commodities. I sell those all over the world.
great.
Yeah.
So what is your what's your platform for governor? What are you planning to do?
Is a platform of overarching freedoms. It's simple. That's basically what it is. It's restoring our constitutional rights and getting back to that. I've identified a platform with probably 10 different items, but they all fall under that. And it's protecting our Second Amendment because it upholds the rest of the Constitution. It's not defunding the police and fighting the crime that they've not been allowed to do their jobs to fight, and prosecuting those folks. I think you mentioned a little bit earlier some of the homeless issues. We should be enabling that. So probably 10 different issues that spread out all the way across the state. Obviously, I'm strongly against the mandates. I would actually limit my own emergency powers. I'm hoping for a constitutional amendment. That's something I'll be very strongly fighting for, so that no future tyrant can actually get in there and do the same thing we just saw Kate Brown do.
Right.
Parental rights is huge right now. I mean, I would get in there just like half the states have done and eliminate critical race theory. It needs to be banned, and an executive order could do that.
What else do you want to say to the people of Oregon?
I think that Oregon right now is on the edge of a cliff, and we can't stand 8 or 12 more years of something even worse than Kate Brown. And on the Democrat side, that's what we have coming up. We have to stop this right now with this election. So I actually personally believe we're in a spiritual war. This isn't just political. What we're seeing is a fight for good and evil. And it's a fight for either retaining our constitutional republic or going off into communism and socialism. And we need to make a stand right now with this election and get back to just being Americans, I think.
Great.
So,
There's definitely been a lot of businesses who have been impacted by Kate Brown's, orders for
yes.
COVID. What's your thought about how the COVID restrictions should have been handled?
They should have never been handled with lockdowns or mandates. I mean, even the World Health Organization's special envoy to COVID advised right at the start, never use a lockdown as a primary means of restricting a virus in a pandemic. Black and white. It was completely ignored. I don't understand that. I would have focused on early treatment protocols and then trusting my people, essentially. I mean, one of our basic rights is the right to decide how we are going to manage our health. It's the right to self-preservation in the way that we see fit. We're not children, and the governor is not a parent.
What's your opinion on the ongoing violence that's been occurring between Antifa against various businesses in Portland, as well as other types of civil groups such as the Proud Boys and such?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. First of all, our police are being used as political pawns. They're not allowed to be police. They need to get in there and make those arrests and be supported and not defunded and criticized for actually doing their job. That's absolutely insane. So that's a top-down issue. And, with me, the respect and the funding would be back. The second part of that is prosecution. These folks should not have been just turned loose onto the streets by the district attorney of Multnomah County. And I know some of my competing other candidates have come up with some pretty strange ideas on how to handle that. One of them is suggesting federalizing the police. And I am completely against that because per statute, as governor, I could just simply use Oregon law to bypass the district attorney of Multnomah County and prosecute through the state's attorney general's office. There's a lot more chance there that would happen.
I see. Do you think that there are any reforms that need to be made for police?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the last question.
Do you think that there are any types of reforms that do need to be made for local police here in Oregon?
There probably are, but it's minimal. People don't understand the amount of training that our law enforcement go through. We have DPSST in place. And at each step in law enforcement, when you're brought on, you go through basic training, basically. And so you get through that step. And then each step along the way, an officer has to continually go through training, clear up into an executive level if you're going to be in, brass. And by the time these folks have been in that career for a decade or so, they've probably earned a master's or a doctorate in criminal law enforcement. They just don't have the certificate to show it. So there's an awful lot of training that goes in already that people aren't aware of.
I see. Last month here in Yamhill County, there was a notice put out on the social media post for the Yamhill County Sheriff's Department. They were issuing a warning for people because of the upcoming holiday season to be careful on the roads. And they had mentioned that one of their deputies had arrested a person twice in the same day for a DUI. When they were inquired about how that was possible, the post manager for the Facebook page, they said that the local district attorney's office is not holding people and charging them, apparently. What is your opinion on that?
I think it's complete neglect at this point, and I think that there's a definite motivation for some reason to turn these folks back out. One of the things that happened during the COVID response from Kate Brown's office is she reduced bed capacity at most of the county jails. And it takes a strong constitutional sheriff to stand up against that and open it up, because there's always a threat of losing insurance or being sued. But that's created a catch and release system all across the state at every county. And so people who are not very serious repeat offenders with violent crimes are being turned back out because they're trying to hold the beds for the folks that are, rapists or murderers for the most part. So you can see all of those other crimes have just skyrocketed, and people are repeatedly turned out onto the street. We had a case over in Baker County where someone was arrested repeatedly throughout the day before finally being able to hold her and then get her out of the area.
What is your opinion on the way that the Oregon Board of Education has been managing our schools?
I think it's a hot mess. So our schools have become indoctrination camps, and that seems to be a priority when it shouldn't be. We need to get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic. We need to get the politics out of the school system. And I think one of the best ways to do that first is to go in and clean house. I mean, there are people clearly in there that need terminated. And the second part is if we implement free market economy inside our school system by having the money follow the kids, then parents all of a sudden are more in control, which is exactly how it should be. What I did actually last year when all of this started was pull my child out of the school system and homeschooled. This year, we had several teachers resign their positions over in 5J school district because of the vaccine mandates that they were facing. And so we had several of those without jobs. A couple of those folks reached out, and a bunch of parents got together, and we are individually paying as a group these teachers. It's like homeschooling on steroids, basically. And so the parents are in charge of the curriculum, working with the teacher. There's no indoctrination. It's like-minded people, and they're getting a good, high-quality education. We call them the one-room schoolhouses over in Northeast Oregon, but I've heard all across the state they're being called pods. But it costs us per family about $260 a month to pull that off. Could you imagine if we had the money following the child, what we as parents and teachers could do with that money? I mean, right now we're spending close to the most money in the United States and Oregon for the least results.
What's your ideal situation for the parent groups and the parent advocacy groups? Is your opinion that they should all homeschool, or is it that we need school reform?
Right now we're doing that because we're going around the system, and that's the only option we have. Ultimately, I think with the money following the child, that would lead to school reform because people everywhere would be choosing a different option. You know, it would force it to happen.
What's your...
sorry.
No, keep going.
I was going to say, I'm actually concerned that if something doesn't shift, that homeschoolers and these groups will be targeted next by the state.
Many people feel that the tax structure in Oregon is particularly unfair toward low income and middle class. And what's your thoughts on that?
I think the tax structure in Oregon is not particularly great for anyone, to tell you the truth. It's not a business-friendly economy. It's just not a friendly economy in general to come into. So, you know, as a small business owner, it's really is death by 1,000 cuts. It's coming through not just taxes, but fees. Everything doubles. And then out in the natural resources industries, of course, you're going through layers and layers of government with different fee structures. You're going through 5 or 6 different layers of bureaucracy before you can even operate. So,
what would you like seen done in regards to changes to our tax structure?
I would like to start with all of the fee structures and go through those, because this is some of the things that people ask when it comes to taxes are outside the power of the governor. I've seen some pretty wild promises out there, as if a governor can go in and unilaterally just strike legislation off the books. And I wouldn't be able to do that, and neither would any other candidate, honestly. What I could do would be to eliminate and veto anything else that came through, any other tax hike. And that I could use my voice to hopefully get legislation in place to start lowering some of these things. And, you know, I'm conservative. I think government needs to shrink. And the more government shrinks, the fewer tax dollars are necessary to fund that.
What is your opinion about the economy here in the state of Oregon? It's my understanding most of the revenue actually comes from the more rural areas. That's where more of our farming, our agriculture, our timber is all done. These aren't the most populated areas of the state, you know, but they tend to produce most of the revenue, and of course, you know, consequently the taxes for the state. What's your opinion on how they are being represented, their interests are being represented?
You know, I hear the same thing in every corner of the state. There's a complete disrespect in Salem toward natural resources industries and to all of our rural counties. And they don't feel like they have a voice because they haven't for a very long time. I think personally, the more we encourage our logging, farming, ranching, mining, fishing, the more self-sufficient we are. See, I grew up on a cattle ranch over in Baker City, so all of these things are my backyard. I mean, the things that I've dealt with my entire life. So I get rural Oregon, and I get these industries, and they aren't respected, and they're squelched. And for some reason, down in that blue strip of counties, there seems to be a lack of awareness where our food comes from, even.
What are some of your opinions on the way that the larger metropolitan areas have been managed? Do you think that they're managed well? Do you think that they're managed poorly? What would you change about the way that they're managed as far as from the state level is concerned?
Oh, they've absolutely been managed poorly, and a lot of that falls back again on failed legislation. So, the two issues I hear in the more urban areas are not just restricted to the urban areas anymore. They're spreading out across the state, and that's violent crime and homelessness.
Do you have a specific plan on how you would do anything differently?
Well, absolutely. I mean, again, I go back with the violent crime. You have a mayor and city council in Portland who are just not dealing with it. And then homelessness is an entirely different issue. I'm not sure if you're aware of the legislation that's gone through this last session, but it's horrific.